clause number 6, 6.1 actions to address risks and opportunities, 6.1.1 general, when planning the ISMS, the organization shall consider the issues referred to in 4.1 and the requirements referred to in 4.2 and determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed. If you recall, in our clause number 4.1, we've been asked to create a list of internal external issues impacting our ISMS. So in my clause number 4.1, I have an issues list, and in my 4.2, I have a list of interested parties and their requirements. So this is asking you, vis-a-vis the list that you created, identify risks and opportunities associated, and then look at handling it. So let's say I am saying as one of my issues, employee attrition were one of our issues. I am calling it a risk. आगे जब दोबारा risk management का conversation करेंगे, then you got to decide on what is the risk option we want to take, and then you decide on a risk treatment plan. I will like to point out here, बहुत सारी organizations separate risk register बनाने की बजाय simply clause number 4 को ही इस्तेमाल कर लेती है as a risk register. So a lot of organizations, when they are creating their information security risk register, they are basing it completely on clause number 4.1. वो कोई separate infrastructure नहीं बनाते हैं for their risk management. It says A, ensure the ISMS can achieve its intended outcome, prevent or reduce undesired effects, achieve continual improvement. The organization shall plan actions to address these risks and opportunities. E, how to integrate and implement the actions into ISMS processes and evaluate the effectiveness of these actions. एक क्वेश्चन बार बार ऑडिटर भी आपसे पूछा।
Sir, if you're saying something is not audible.
ओवर ओवर मैंने पूरा ये पढ़ा लिया विदाउट।
Yeah, that what I was wondering what is happening because my audio is that.
Apologies. I am loud and clear, everyone.
Yeah.
Yes, Pranay.
Sure. So 6.1 actions to address risks and opportunities. 6.1.1 when planning on the ISMS, the organization shall consider issues referred to in 4.1 and the 4.2 and determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed. So in my 4.1, I already have a issues register, right? In my 4.2, I have a list of interested parties and their requirements.
Yes.
Now they would want to take it to its due closure. Now that they have been identified, you got to start thinking in terms of the list of issues that you have, whether that is a risk or an opportunity, and how do you intend to handle it to the benefit of ISMS. How are you looking at preventing or reducing the undesired effect? So if I'm saying employee attrition as one of the issues, employee attrition could impact my confidentiality. Now that the person knows things about my organization, he may go out and reveal confidential information. So now I am calling it a risk. And think about what do you do in order to either avoid the risk, reduce the risk, transfer the risk. So what is your risk option going to be able to handle the undesired effect? Everyone with me? Simple thought.
Yes.
The organization shall plan actions to address these risks and opportunities. E. How to integrate and implement the actions into ISMS and evaluate the effectiveness of these actions. Please realize, बहुत सारी organizations are using this issue register as their risk register. वो कोई separate risk document नहीं create कर रहे हैं. What they are doing is इसी issue register को issue based ही पूरा risk management वो कर लेते हैं. जब अपन risk management वाले segment में आएंगे, then we will talk about the mandates. But lot of organizations I am mentioning to you use the clause number 4.1 का documentation itself for ISMS. This is a very important element. Always understand, कभी भी कोई ISMS का mandate आप fulfill करेंगे, so दो questions आपके पास हमेशा आएंगे. How have you integrated that to your ISMS and subsequently your organizational processes, and how did you evaluate the actions का effectiveness? This is a पक्का auditable element everywhere. आप कोई भी एक्शन ले रहे हो, घूम फिर करके ऑडिटर ये क्वेश्चन पूछेगा ही पूछेगा. Now the most important part of ISMS, information security risk assessment. The organization shall define and apply IS risk assessment process that establishes and maintains the IS risk criteria. Two things that it wants. You give me the criteria for acceptance of the risk. You give me the criteria for performing information security risk assessment. Ensures that repeated IS risk assessments produce consistent, valid and comparable results. Identifies the information security risk. Apply the IS risk assessment process to identify risk associated with loss of CIA. So your identification of risk must include the CIA thought that we've been discussing so far. Identify the risk owners. So like we were discussing in our earlier sessions, I am of the view that एक तरीका simplistic सा यही है that we set about to identify our information assets. We identify threats and the associated vulnerabilities to these assets. You may want to do a small conversation on the impact that it may have. Measure that against CIA. Include likelihood also. Basis the CIAL. Calculate some sort of risk value. If you are a old organization, तो एक existing controls का column आप अपने risk sheet पे add कर सकते हो. So I am saying step 1, list down all information assets within the organization. In asset space, threats and vulnerabilities. What could be the impact? Always think in terms of CIA. Now, what are your current controls, if any? Then quantify standard will also ask you to assess the likelihood. तो एक और एलिमेंट हमने L ऐड कर दिया. Basis this C, I, A and L, you may want to calculate your. एक और ऑर्गेनाइजेशन that I have been looking at, उन्होंने एक नया एलिमेंट ऐड कर दिया है, बोले लीगैलिटी. So apart from confidentiality, integrity, availability, they have added another element called legality. While it is not from an information security standpoint, but legal requirements तो पूरा करना हर standard mandate करेगा. So that's not a bad twist to add to. Once you've done your risk value based on your CIAL, we discussed in the previous session, risk handling के लिए जो options हैं आपके पास, you could either avoid the risk, reduce the risk, transfer the risk, or accept it. Couple of other options that people are using now. Quarantine, when I'm not able to avoid, maybe I can postpone it for a while. If I can't transfer completely, I can maybe share some of it. These could be some of the possible options. So once you've identified your risk, look at what is the risk option that you want to explore, and then decide on the actionables or the control points so that हम अपना threat और उससे associated vulnerability को handle कर लें. Decide on the risk option to be used. Define controls, also referred to as the risk treatment plan. Once you've identified your risk treatment plan, your controls, so roles and responsibility, definition, timeline, etc., etc. The other elements could be added to make the process foolproof. एक और क्वेश्चन वो हमसे पूछ रहा था, रिस्क ओनर पूछ रहा है. So maybe a 7.1 could be added. Maybe 7.1 and 7.2. एक वो बोल रहा है हमको रिस्क का क्लासिफिकेशन, and it also asks us owners. Simple thought everyone. इसमें कोई questions हैं? Ravi, anyone? Abhilash?
No, sir.
बिकॉज ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट ऑडिट के लिए भी क्वेश्चन है और ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट इंटरव्यू के लिए भी क्वेश्चन हैं कि क्या क्या एलिमेंट्स आपके लिए मैंडेटरी हैं व्हेन यू आर लुकिंग एट इंफॉर्मेशन सिक्योरिटी रिस्क मैनेजमेंट। ये आपसे D1 में मांग रहा है यू आर असेस द पोटेंशियल कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस, रियलिस्टिक लाइक्लीहुड और रिस्क के लेवल्स। So basis our risk value, we said risk value के basis पे हमने critical risk, high, medium, low type कुछ define कर दिया। We will use the risk value to prioritize. ये आपसे एक्सपेक्ट करता है दैट इंफॉर्मेशन सिक्योरिटी रिस्क असेसमेंट प्रोसेस, तो हमारा असेसमेंट का प्रोसेस तो पॉसिबली इज ओनली टिल हियर। एवरीवन 8, 9, 10 तो रिस्क की हैंडलिंग है, राइट ना?
Yes, Pranay.
Six point 1.3, the organization shall define and apply an IS treatment process to select appropriate information security risk treatment options, taking account of risk assessment results. Determine controls that are necessary to implement the IS risk treatment options chosen. Compare the controls determined in clause number 6.1.3 to the ones in annexure. एक ये traceability actually is very helpful. थोड़ा सा काम बढ़ाती है, but it actually helps you realize that annexure A में जो controls mentioned है वो कंट्रोल्स बहुत हद तक ये सब कुछ कवर कर लेगा। सो वॉट एवर कंट्रोल्स यू आइडेंटिफाइड यू विल हैव टू मेंशन हाउ आर दे लिंक्ड टू द वंस मेंशन्ड इन annexure A. So वो linking is an important question that the auditor will be looking at. D, produce a SOA which contains necessary controls produce a SOA that contains the necessary controls, मतलब जो हमने determine किया for risk treatment. So SOA must have a list of all the controls that you've implemented, and that tally of how they are linked to annexure A, whatever controls you've included, unka justification, and if you've excluded any controls, uska justification. मेरे अपने एक्सपीरियंस में I'll give you one simplistic thought. बहुत मुश्किल है ऑडिटर को कन्विंस करना फॉर एनी एक्सक्लूजन. तो प्लीज इंश्योर करिएगा दैट इफ यू आर एक्सक्लूडिंग समथिंग फ्रॉम योर सोआ डॉक्यूमेंट, सोआ में क्या क्या करना है, लिस्ट ऑफ ऑल कंट्रोल्स जो आपने इंप्लीमेंट किया, उसका जस्टिफिकेशन, लिस्ट ऑफ ऑल एक्सक्लूजन्स, उसका जस्टिफिकेशन. कंट्रोल्स की लिंकिंग टू एनेक्चर ए इज एडवाइजेबल. बहुत सारे ऑडिटर्स इसमें भी नॉन कन्फॉर्मिटी लिख देते हैं अगर लिंक नहीं है तो सोआ में. रिमेंबर दैट सोआ का वर्जन gets a mention on your ISMS का document. So your ISMS certificate will be vis-a-vis a SOA version number. So you got to be very very careful. कस्टमर भी जब आपसे ISMS के बारे में पूछेगा सबसे पहले वो SOA ही मांगेगा. So be simplistic about it. Don't try and do too many things. Simply statement of applicability में करना क्या है, जो भी कंट्रोल्स हैं उनकी लिस्ट और उनका जस्टिफिकेशन, व्हाई डिड यू इम्प्लीमेंट वॉट एवर यू इम्प्लीमेंटेड. और अगर गलती से कोई छोड़ दिया है तो उसका भी लिस्ट एंड द सब्सिक्वेंट जस्टिफिकेशन फॉर इट. सिंपल थॉट एवरीवन. cool. एक बार सब लोग प्लीज क्लॉज नंबर 6.1 तक पढ़ लीजिए. आस्क मी क्वेश्चंस इफ एनी एंड देन वी प्रोसीड फ्रॉम हियर. 6.2 information security objectives and planning to achieve them. The standard reads, the organization shall establish IS objectives at relevant functions and levels. So we will need KPIs for the organization. We will need KPIs, basis, functions, and levels within the organization. This is an important question, and this could sometimes make information security implementation much easier, because ये अच्छा framework देता है to monitor information security performances. It is expecting that the objectives shall be consistent with your policy, shall be measurable, take into account the ISMS requirements and results from risk assessment, be monitored, be communicated, be updated as appropriate, and be available as documented information. So मेरा thought तो बहुत simplistic है. जो key performance indicators हैं, this could be around controls themselves. We understand that information security तब तक implement नहीं होगा अच्छे से जब तक awareness drive नहीं करेंगे हम. So as an organization, I could have a KPI that 100% people are trained on ISMS. In fact, in one of my consulting endeavors, what I did was Annexure A के सारे controls को मैंने convert करके KPIs में भी convert कर दिया. तो जो उनकी demand थी, वो demand को मैंने measurable बना दिया. Let's say one demand is that all documents, all policy, etc. must be approved. तो मैंने उसको KPI में कन्वर्ट कर दिया that the percentage document that has to be approved is 100. Awareness obviously will be a very important KPI. Background verification is a mandate. तो background verification के around targets draw कर दीजिए. Everyone with me?
Yes.
To make your life more accountable, what ISMS has done for you is in the subsequent section, they've gone to the extent of saying whatever information security objectives you've defined, what will be done, वो करने में क्या resources लगेंगे, who are the people responsible for it, कब तक complete होगा, and how the results will be evaluated. So let's say I'm saying background, let's say something as simplistic as awareness. What will be done? So for all new joiners, induction training का ही हिस्सा कर देंगे अपन. Induction training to include information security awareness. ये मैंने what का आंसर दे दिया. Question number 2, what resources will be needed? So मुझे ट्रेनिंग कंटेंट का जरूरत है, ट्रेनर का जरूरत है, and other training facilities. Who will be responsible? I am holding the CISO responsible for this. When will it be completed? It's an ongoing activity, but within first 2 months of a new joiner onboarded to an organization. How the results will be evaluated? So upon completion, एक टेस्ट होगा, टेस्ट के रिजल्ट्स अपन स्टोर करेंगे. Everyone, simple thought. What will be done? So वो आपका जो भी KPI है, वो KPI को अचीव करने के लिए आप क्या करोगे? Who will be responsible? What resources will be needed? कौन रिस्पॉन्सिबल है ओवरऑल, कब तक कंप्लीट होगा और रिजल्ट्स कैसे इवैल्यूएट होंगे. एज अ ऑडिटर आपका काम बहुत सिंपल है. ऑब्जेक्टिव्स लाइक वी बीन सेइंग हैज टू बी एट अ org level and at function level. When we are auditing the ISMS team, हम उनसे ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल ऑब्जेक्टिव मांगे और हर डिपार्टमेंट के ऑडिट में उनके रेलेवेंट फंक्शंस रिलेटेड KPIs मांगे. इसका एविडेंस, इसकी ट्रैकिंग बहुत क्रूशल हो जाएगी when we are implementing and auditing the information security. Look for evidence that it has been communicated and whether they have made any changes to this. Simple, everyone.
एक बार रिपीट कर दिए प्रणय जी.
तो आपसे ऑब्जेक्टिव में डिमांड क्या किया? सो ऑब्जेक्टिव आपको कह रहा है स्टेटमेंट नंबर 1 that it has to be at an org level, it has to be at function and levels. तो as auditors हम तो चेक करेंगे कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल KPIs अगर अपन डिफाइन ऑडिट कर रहे हैं तो मेरा ऑडिटी तो ISMS टीम है, उनसे मैं बोलूंगा कि मुझे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के KPIs दिखा दो. जब मैं डिपार्टमेंट का फंक्शन का ऑडिट कर रहा हूं तो डिपार्टमेंट से ये ऑडिट कर लूंगा. तो क्वेश्चन नंबर 1 हैंडल्ड। जिस भी यूनिट से मैं पूछ रहा हूं, आई विल वांट टू ऑडिट whether it has been communicated or not. So let's say you've created a background verification ka control. You've created a threat intelligence ke around KPI. I would want to see that it has been communicated. अगर आप internal auditor हैं तो एक step बढ़ जाइए, communication के साथ साथ acknowledgement का भी demand कर दीजिए. And then हर control के around these are the questions: what will be done, what resources needed, who will be responsible, when will it be completed. And please realize, अगर objectives ठीक से identified हैं, ठीक से implemented हैं, तो आपका information security बहुत strong होगा. तो इसको बहुत strongly audit करना है as a information security auditor. When the organization determines the need for changes to the ISMS, the changes shall be carried out in a planned manner. So, must have a robust infrastructure around managing change vis-a-vis information security. So, change management process must be very, very carefully outlined and very, very rigorously followed. डिपेंड करता है आपकी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन पे, डिपेंड करता है आपके ऑर्गेनाइजेशनल प्रोसेसेस की मैच्योरिटी पे कि क्लॉज नंबर 6.3 कितना रोबस्ट तरीके से अपन ऑडिट करेंगे. आगे कंट्रोल्स में कुछ कंट्रोल्स आएंगे which are specifically talking about how do you handle change, but even otherwise we will come back to this for a conversation.